In spite of the fuel crisis, American compacts were moving upmarket in the late 1970s, becoming bigger and heavier than ever. But the subcompact market was starting to evolve, with cars such as the Chevrolet Chevette of 1976, also sold in Canada as the Pontiac Acadian. The three-door hatchback was 162 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase, and the five-door was 165 inches long on a 97-inch wheelbase, weighing about 2,100 pounds. Initially, engines were a 1.4 or 1.6-liter inline-4 with 52 to 60 horsepower. Prices were $2,900 to $3,100, and the cars were tested at 25 to 30 miles per gallon, although ratings could be as high as 39 on the highway. Chevette sales for the U.S. amounted to 190,000 for the year, and the bigger engine allowed for nearly 95 miles an hour and a 19.5-second quarter mile, a car that effectively replaced the Chevy Vega and Pontiac Aster, which continued through 1977, which had a similar starting price, but options could take them several $100s higher. They were 170 inches long and a 97-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,200 to 2,300 pounds. The 2.3-liter engine offered 70 to 84 horsepower and averaged 20 to 24 miles per gallon. A GT Coupe was a mid-19-second car with a top speed near 105. In its final year, the Vega sold close to 80,000 and the Aster around 30,000. AMC's Gremlin was made through 1978 with a $3,000 to $3,500 starting price. Although it seemed to look the part at 166 inches long on a 96-inch wheelbase, it was rather hefty at 2,600 to 2,800 pounds. City mileage could be as low as 12 for the 5-liter 304 V8 and as high as 23 for the 2-liter 4-cylinder. But most came with a straight 6, either a 3.8-liter 232 or a 4.2-liter 258. Horsepower ranged from 80 to 150, and the big 6 with 120 horsepower was a high 17-second car. For their final year, sales dropped to less than half what they were the year before, to just over 20,000. Mercury got a version of the Pinto as the Bobcat in 1975, with first-year sales just under 35,000. It was priced from $3,200 to $3,500, was 171 to 181 inches long on a wheelbase between 94 and 95 inches. Weight was 2,100 to 2,600 pounds, and the 2.3-liter inline-4 produced 82 horsepower for a tested average of 22 to 25 miles per gallon, speeds over 95 miles an hour, and a 19.5-second quarter mile. It and the Ford Pinto would run through 1980, sharing wheelbase and length, and by the end of its run cost $3,400 to $4,700. Options had grown to include a 2.8-liter V6 with 103 horsepower, when equipped with an automatic. It was still just a mid-18-second car. But even after a decade of growing competition, sales for 1979 were still close to 200,000, taking the total to over 3 million. The Dodge Colt of 1975 was 171 inches long on a 93-inch wheelbase, and roughly 2,200 pounds, based on the Mitsubishi Galant, offered with either a 1.6-liter with 79 horsepower or a 2-liter with 89 horsepower. A GT Coupe was a low 18-second car with a top speed over 100 miles an hour, priced around $3,600. With the smaller engine, it was rated at 20 miles per gallon. While the Plymouth Arrow was a Mitsubishi Celeste, the sporty hatchback version of the Lancer, making it a bit pricey at $5,400. It was 170 inches long on a 93-inch wheelbase and 2,300 pounds. Engines included a 1.6-liter with 78 to 83 horsepower, a 2-liter with 93 horsepower, or a 2.6-liter with 105 horsepower, giving the GT a spirited mid-17-second quarter mile and a top speed over 105. The AMC Hornet was about the only reasonably sized American compact running through 1977. It was 186 inches long on a 108-inch wheelbase and weighed 3,000 to 3,400 pounds, priced from $2,500 to up to $3,900 for a V8 Sportabout, offered with a 3.8-liter 232 or 4.2-liter 258 straight 6 with 88 or 109 horsepower, or a 5-liter 304 V8 with 121 horsepower. Only offered with an automatic, making it a high 18-second car with a top speed over 105, selling nearly 80,000 for the year. Chevrolet's Nova for 1975 was pretty huge for the segment, at 197 inches long on a 111-inch wheelbase and 3,300 to 3,500 pounds. Base engine was a 4.1-liter straight six with 105 horsepower, and optional V8s were initially a 4.3-liter 262 with 110 horsepower and a 5.7-liter 350 with 145 to 155 horsepower. It could be had with a 4-speed for a quarter mile just over 17.5 seconds and a top speed near 115. Costing $3,200 to $3,900, Chevrolet sold nearly $275,000 for the year. The Pontiac Ventura and later the Phoenix were essentially the same car, costing $3,200 to $4,000, using the same base Chevy straight six, but an optional 4.3-liter Oldsmobile 260 V8 with 110 horsepower, or a 5.7-liter Buick 350 with 145 to 165 horsepower, which was only offered with an automatic for a high 17-second quarter mile and a top speed just below 115. 1975 sales were over 65,000. The also similar Oldsmobile Omega was 200 inches long on a 111-inch wheelbase and up to 3,600 pounds. Priced from $3,200 to $4,300, it also used the 4.1-liter Chevy engine as standard, but used an Oldsmobile 5.7-liter 350 with 165 horsepower as the top engine. Sales were just under 40,000, and it too was a high 17-second car, but top speed was over 115. Buick Skylark used the same engines as the Pontiac, but could be better equipped, so prices were $3,200 to $4,200. Also 200 inches long on a 111-inch wheelbase. It could reach 3,700 pounds. Quarter mile was in the high 17s, top speed close to 120, and sales near 60,000. The Plymouth Volare was introduced in 1976, replacing the Valiant. It used either a 109 or 113-inch wheelbase, being 198 to 202 inches long, and 3,300 to 3,800 pounds. Priced from $3,300 to $4,400. Engines included a 3.7-liter 225 slant 6 with 110 horsepower, a 5.2-liter 318 with 140 to 150 horsepower, or a 5.9-liter 360 with 170 horsepower. Sales would be around $225,000, and a 360 Roadrunner could do the quarter mile in under 17 seconds and nearly reach 120 miles an hour. The Dodge Aspen was pretty much the same car, with the same dimensions, price, and engines. Sales were around $190,000, and a 318 RT was a low 17-second car with a top speed around 115. The so-called right-sized Ford Granada fit between the bigger Gran Torino and the smaller Maverick, sharing its platform and 110-inch wheelbase with the four-door version of the smaller car that it was originally supposed to replace. It was 198 inches long in both 2- and 4-door form, and prices were $3,700 to $4,300, selling more than $300,000 in its first year. Sixes came in 3.3-liter 200 and 4.1-liter 250, and V8s in 5-liter 302 and 5.8-liter 351, with horsepower ranging from 72 to 153. With the 302, it was a mid-17-second car with a top speed over 105. The better-equipped Mercury version was called the Monarch, initially $3,800 to $5,400, and selling just over $100,000. It would last through 1980, helping the brand stay competitive when GM downsized their mid-sized cars. Up to 200 inches long, the top 351 Windsor-powered cars were only offered with an automatic for a mid-17-second quarter mile and speeds near 110. The smart-sized LeBaron of 1977 was a different direction for Chrysler at the time, being only 204 to 206 inches long on an 113-inch wheelbase and 3,600 to 3,800 pounds. Prices started between $5,100 and $5,200, and it was initially offered with just a 5.2-liter 318 with 135 to 166 horsepower. 55,000 sold its first year, and top models took more than 19 seconds to do the quarter mile, with the top speed being around 110. Lincoln got a version of the Granada in 1977 as the Versailles, sharing the 110-inch wheelbase and being 201 inches long, getting the full Continental look including the spare tire hump. Prices started at over $12,000, offered with either the 302 or 351 Windsor V8 for 122 to 135 horsepower, taking nearly 20 seconds to do the quarter mile. Just over 15,000 sold for the year. It was Lincoln's answer to the Cadillac Seville that arrived in 1975, using a stretched and modified platform from the Nova. It was 204 inches long on a 114-inch wheelbase, weighing 4,300 pounds. Only offered with Oldsmobile's 5.7-liter 350 rocket with 180 horsepower, and starting at over $12,000. It was capable of a high 18-second quarter mile, and could do more than 115 miles an hour. First-year sales were around 16,000. In Britain, Reliant offered the Kitten. It was 131 inches long on an 85-inch wheelbase, and weighed 1,100 pounds. Its 40 horsepower came from an 850cc inline-4 and could do nearly 80 miles per hour, and the quarter mile took just over 20 seconds. The Mini went into its fourth series in 1976, and like the previous version, was offered as a Clubman, a facelifted version of the original design. It had a longer nose, making it 125 inches long on an 80-inch wheelbase, and weight was 1,400 to 1,500 pounds. It also had bigger engines, including a 1,000, 1,100, and 1,275 for 40 to 54 horsepower. The 1275 GT took just over 19 seconds to do the quarter mile and could nearly do 90 miles an hour. The Ford Fiesta arrived in 1976. It was 140 inches long on a 90-inch wheelbase, initially with either a 1 or 1.1 liter with 40 to 52 horsepower. It was priced under 1,900 pounds, and an S could reach near 90, and it did a high 19-second quarter mile. It would soon come to the U.S., where it was priced at $3,700 and used a 66 horsepower 1.6 liter, tested at 28 to 32 miles per gallon. The Vauxhall Chevette was somewhat between the Chevy Chevette and the Opel Kadett. Prices started around 1,600 pounds, and it was 155 to 164 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase, weighing 1,900 pounds. Initially powered by a 1.3-liter inline-4 with 49 to 58 horsepower, it could do about 90 miles an hour. And the Vauxhall Viva would last until 1979. It was 163 inches long on a 97-inch wheelbase, and 1,800 to 2,200 pounds. Its 1,800cc engine was up to 88 horsepower, with a top speed near 100 miles an hour. The Ford Escort Mark II was made from 1975 to 1980. It was 157 inches long on a 95-inch wheelbase, weighing 1,900 pounds, offered with an 1,100, 1,300, 1,600, or 2,000 with 40 to 115 horsepower, and an RS was capable of a quarter mile in just over 16 seconds, and a top speed near 115. In France, the Citroën LN was made from 76 to 78. It was 133 inches long on an 88-inch wheelbase, and weighed 1,500 pounds. Power came from a 600cc Boxer twin that produced 32 horsepower, for a quarter mile in the upper 23-second range, and it could nearly reach 75 miles an hour. The Simca 1100 had been around for more than a decade by this point, lasting through 1979. It was 155 inches long on a 99-inch wheelbase and 2,000 pounds, and it got 49 to 54 horsepower from its inline-4 for a mid-20-second quarter mile and a top speed near 90. Peugeot's 104 got a facelift in 1976 that included a new 5-door hatchback. Length was 129 to 141 inches on an 88 to 95-inch wheelbase, and it was powered by a 950 or 1100cc engine for 44 to 56 horsepower, making it a high 19-second car with a top speed near 95 miles an hour. The Renault 5 came to the U.S. in 1976 as Le Car and powered by a 1.3-liter with 58 horsepower. Priced just over $3,300, it was 143 inches long on a 95-inch wheelbase and weighed 1,800 pounds. Testing indicated that it would get 26 to 30 miles per gallon, could do nearly 95 miles an hour, and a low 19-second quarter mile. In Spain, one could get a Seat 133, introduced in 1975. It remained rear-wheel drive and was 136 inches long on a 79-inch wheelbase weighing 1,500 pounds. Sharing its engine with the Fiat 850, it had 34 to 44 horsepower for a 21-second quarter mile and speeds near 85. In Germany, the Trabant 601 carried on. It was 140 to 142 inches long on an 80-inch wheelbase and about 1,400 pounds. The 600cc two-stroke twin produced 26 horsepower for speeds over 60 miles an hour. Volkswagen introduced the front-wheel drive water-cooled Golf in 1974 that would come to the U.S. as the Rabbit. It was 146 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase and 1,700 pounds, initially with an 1,100cc inline-4 with 50 horsepower for speeds over 85 miles an hour. Audi's Fox was 172 to 173 inches long on a 97-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,000 to 2,300 pounds. It was powered by a 1.6-liter with approximately 80 horsepower for a top speed of 100 miles an hour and a quarter mile just over 18 seconds. The Opel Kadett C was 154 to 163 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase and 1,700 pounds. It could be had with a 1, 1.2, or 1.6-liter with 40 to 74 horsepower, or an 113 horsepower 2-liter in the GTE for a mid-16-second quarter mile and a top speed over 115. BMW introduced the 3 Series in 1975, being 172 to 178 inches long, depending on the market, on a 101-inch wheelbase and 2,300 to 2,600 pounds. Initially in 1.6, 1.8, or 2-liter with 89 to 123 horsepower for a mid-16-second quarter mile and speeds over 115 miles an hour. It came to the U.S. 2 years later with either the 1.8-liter with 101 horsepower or a 2.7-liter with 121 horsepower, and prices could exceed $4,000. In Italy, the Fiat 126 was essentially an updated 500, and in 1977 it upgraded from 600 to 650 cc's with 23 horsepower. It was 120 inches long on a 72-inch wheelbase, weighing 1,300 to 1,400 pounds, and could almost do 70 miles an hour, while the quarter mile took 24.5 seconds. Alfa Romeo's Alfa Sud carried on and was 153 inches long on a 97-inch wheelbase, weighing 1,800 pounds. It used either a 1.2 or 1.3-liter Boxer 4 with 62 to 67 horsepower, reaching more than 95 miles an hour, doing a high 18-second quarter mile, and averaging 25 miles per gallon. The Czech Skoda 110 lasted through 1977. It was 164 inches long on a 95-inch wheelbase and weighed 1,800 pounds. The 1,100cc inline-4 produced 47 to 61 horsepower, and the sporty rally version could do nearly 85 miles an hour and did the quarter mile in under 21 seconds. In the Soviet Union, the ZAZ 968A would finish the decade, being 147 inches long on an 85-inch wheelbase and weighing 1,700 pounds. It had a 1,200cc V4 with 44 horsepower for a claimed top speed over 75 miles an hour. 1977 would see the introduction of the four-wheel drive VAZ 2121, or Lada Niva. Its 1.6-liter overhead cam engine produced 75 horsepower for speeds over 80 miles an hour. In Sweden, the Saab 96 carried on through 1980, by which point it was 169 inches long on a 98-inch wheelbase and nearly 2,100 pounds. It was powered by a 1.5-liter Ford V4 with 67 horsepower for a quarter mile under 19 seconds, a top speed near 100 miles an hour, and an average of 23 miles per gallon. Volvo introduced the 300 series in 1976 as a replacement for the DAF 66. Initially as the 343, it was 165 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase and 2,200 pounds, using a 1.4-liter Renault inline-4 with 69 horsepower, making it capable of 90 miles an hour. In Australia, although Holden would start to offer an Isuzu Gemini, the Sunbird and Torana continued through 1980, 177 to 178 inches long on a 102-inch wheelbase, and weighing 1,500 to 2,600 pounds. The Sunbird used a 2-liter inline-4 with 80 horsepower, and the Torana a 3.3-liter inline-6 with 89 horsepower. Top speed was around 100 miles an hour, and the quarter mile took 18.5 seconds. In Korea, Hyundai introduced the Pony, derived from what they learned making cars for Ford and Morris. 156 to 157 inches long on a 92-inch wheelbase. It weighed 1,900 to 2,200 pounds and was powered by a 1.2 or 1.4 liter engine with 79 or 91 horsepower. It could do a low 18-second quarter mile and nearly 100 miles an hour and average around 23 miles per gallon. In Japan, the Subaru Rex grew to 126 inches long in 1976 on a 76-inch wheelbase and weighing 1,100 to 1,300 pounds. The 544cc Boxer Twin produced 31 horsepower for speeds over 65 miles an hour and a 22-second quarter mile. The Daihatsu Consort was made through 1977, 146 to 149 inches long on an 85 or 89-inch wheelbase, and weighed just over 1,600 pounds. Powered by either a 1 or 1.2 liter inline 4 with 51 or 63 horsepower for a low 19-second quarter mile and speeds over 90 miles an hour. The Datsun Cherry was sold in the U.S. as the F10, 151 inches long on a 94-inch wheelbase and 1,700 pounds, typically with a 1 or 1.2 liter with 44 to 51 horsepower. U.S. versions, however, got a 1.4 liter with 70 horsepower for a high 18-second quarter mile, speeds near 100 miles an hour, and a tested 28 to 32 miles per gallon. The Mazda Familia was redesigned for 1977, being called the 323 in export markets except the U.S., where it was called the GLC, or Good Little Car. Most were between 151 and 157 inches long on a 91-inch wheelbase. Weighing 1,800 to 2,000 pounds, it was initially powered by a 1 or 1.3 liter with 44 to 59 horsepower. U.S. versions started just over $3,200, did the quarter mile in under 21 seconds, could exceed 85 miles an hour, and were tested at 28 to 32 miles per gallon. The first generation Honda Civic was 130 to 148 inches long, depending on the market, on an 87-inch wheelbase, except the wagon that was 160 inches long on a 90-inch wheelbase. By 1979, it was offered with a 1.2 or 1.5 liter 4 with 54 to 72 horsepower. Top models were capable of 95 miles an hour and a low 18-second quarter mile. U.S. versions were priced from $2,700 to $3,200 and tested at 27 to 33 miles per gallon. The original Toyota Tercel was 156 to 157 inches long on a 98-inch wheelbase and was 1,800 to 1,900 pounds, offered with either a 1.3 or 1.5 liter, depending on the market, with 64 to 82 horsepower, with the Corsa 1500 being able to reach nearly 105 miles an hour. The third-generation Toyota Corolla could range from as low as $2,800 to over $4,000, and testing indicated 26 to 30 miles per gallon, 157 to 168 inches long on a 93-inch wheelbase, and 1,700 to 2,300 pounds, depending on the market. Most used a 1.2 liter with 55 horsepower for speeds over 85 miles an hour, but bigger engines were available, up to a 75 horsepower 1.6 liter in the U.S., where sales exceeded 150,000 for 1975. The Datsun Sunny, or B210, got a facelift for 1976. It was 156 to 163 inches long on a 92-inch wheelbase and weighed 2,000 to 2,100 pounds. Powered by either a 1.2 or 1.4 liter engine, output ranged from 67 to 91 horsepower, and it was tested at 28 to 31 miles per gallon. Prices in the U.S. were just over $3,200 to start. It did a low 19-second quarter mile, and it could nearly do 100 miles an hour. The Mitsubishi Lancer got a facelift for 1976 and would later become the third-generation Dodge Colt in the U.S. Priced from $3,000 for a mileage maker to $4,000 for a GT, it was 156 to 162 inches long on a 92-inch wheelbase and 1,700 to 2,000 pounds. Engines came in 1.2, 1.4, and 1.6 liter, providing 54 to 99 horsepower, with the GTS doing a mid-17-second quarter mile and nearly 105 miles an hour. The Isuzu Gemini was sold in the U.S. as the Buick Opal for around $3,500. It used either a 1.6 or 1.8 liter with 80 to 103 horsepower. It could be anywhere from 163 to 171 inches long on a 95-inch wheelbase, with weight around 2,100 to 2,300 pounds. Top versions were capable of nearly 105 miles an hour and a low 17-second quarter mile, or more than a second quicker than the US version. Clearly, what was considered small was debatable, but going forward, most cars would get smaller. So as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.